Hi, let's say a few words about this epidemic. It's still not being called a pandemic by the World Health Organization, although if we take pan to mean global, it is now global in the sense that it's crossed into several continents and numerous countries. I'm of course talking about the coronavirus. Um, Often these outbreaks get particular epithets or nicknames. For example, H5N1 back in 2009 became known as the Mexico flu or the Mexican swine flu because that's where it had been detected. And a century ago, the Spanish flu actually got its name because, as I understand it, and I may be wrong about this, American troops were being transitioned through Spain on their way back from the First World War. The scary thing about the Spanish flu was, firstly, how global it was. It hit every country on earth, from Iceland to New Zealand and Chile. Um, and also the fact that it affected young, strong people, not old, vulnerable people, which you would usually expect in these cases. Downton Abbey actually had an episode where they dealt with the Spanish flu pandemic. Um, It was staggering in scale. 50 million people, approximately 50 million people died from the Spanish flu, which made it the deadliest event of any kind since the Black Death, probably in human history. Um, the Black Death, of course, killed anywhere from 100 to 200 million people in what was known as the Second Great Pandemic. Um, One thing I've noticed about pandemics in more recent years is that whilst they have spread around the world, the overall mortality has been much, much less. That's something truly to welcome. For example, if you look at SARS, 774 deaths, although it had a major economic impact on Hong Kong. Um, if you look at the Mexico flu H5N1, I believe the final death toll associated with that was just over 15,000, which sounds like a lot of people, but when you consider a global scale, that's actually a very small number for a pandemic. I mean, to put that in context, more people probably die in several countries from road accidents every year than that figure. Ebola in more recent years in West Africa, again, devastating for the communities that it affected, but the overall death toll I believe was around 15 to 20,000. Now, I'm not trivializing this, but I think when you compare that to the 15 million who died from Spanish flu, it puts things in context. The Asian flu of 1968, about 1 million died. So far, this strain of coronavirus, and I'm not a virologist, so I'm no, I'm just speaking in layman's terms here. As I understand it, so far 25 deaths have been confirmed, 630 cases reported, mostly in China, but also some in other countries. The first case to be confirmed in Europe was in France, in Bordeaux, I believe. There was a case in Seattle. Um, One thing that's striking about this, unlike other epidemics, we see a major city, Wuhan. It's a city of 11 million people. It's in the top 10 largest Chinese cities in basically lockdown. I think this is unparalleled in modern times. I can't remember, for example, during the Mexico flu outbreak, Mexico City being quarantined in that sort of way. Um, I guess Hong Kong came under restrictions during SARS, but there's been a mixture of praise for the Chinese government's response, the speed of this response, but also question marks over the true scale of this. It is curious that the World Health Organization still isn't calling it a pandemic, although it's now become the main news event everywhere. Um, Personally, I'm not really worried because I think it is possible to have hyperbole with these things. I mean, it was very similar in narrative coming from the collective media with the H5N1 strain back in 2009. And bad as that was, it wasn't quite the mass killer that everyone feared it would be. But I think the danger with these things is always that they are new. that the science is still being evaluated. And I think with one of the concerns with this is that it's Chinese New Year tomorrow. And by the way, for any Chinese viewers, 新年快乐. Although some of my Chinese contacts said that actually the event is more low key than it used to be, not because of this, but just because people are less focused on it now than in the past. For example, see, GTN New Year's Gala used to be a big thing. Apparently, less so now. I mean, New Year Spring Festival is to China and other countries as well, Vietnam. For example, what Christmas is in the West, it's a big family occasion. People travel around the country. Al Jazeera was showing images of Wuhan. The streets just look deserted. This is a major city in the middle of China, smack bang in the middle. I know Wuhan. I was actually there in 2013, just for a day visit. I didn't stay overnight. A friend of mine actually worked as a tour guide of sorts in the city. In fact, I'm drinking tea right now. The tea isn't from Wuhan, but the decanter, the container that I brought the tea in, is. I've even got a little chime for the famous yellow crane car. Wuhan's an ancient city and it's at the very heart of China. So that also raises, this isn't like some periphery city. This is right smack bang in the middle. So it's a major transit point. It's on the Yangtze. And I think I think one of the biggest challenges the authorities in China will have is to contain public fears. Now, those fears may be exaggerated, but there's also other questions with this. China obviously is the world's most populous country. There are, thousands of Chinese students in the UK and in other countries, and a sizable number of them may be from Wuhan or from Hubei. I should say Hubei province. It isn't just Wuhan in quarantine. There are other cities, and I'll just go through them here around the Wuhan metropolitan area. Uh, Shantou, Chibi, Huanggang, and there was one other. Let me just get this. Izhou. So these are four satellite cities of Wuhan: Huanggang, Izhou, Shantou, and Chibi. These aren't small villages; these are sizable cities in their own right. And then Wuhan, major city in the center of that. So um, I think it might concern some people. For example, as I understand it, no one was allowed to leave Wuhan as of the 23rd, but people will have already left. There will be students around the world. I even heard that two police stations in Bristol, here in the UK, had to temporarily close because a Chinese national was arrested. I don't know what for, but just as a precaution because he had been to Wuhan. We've also had suspected cases in Belfast, Glasgow, and Edinburgh. Um, Personally, I'm not overly worried, but it is going to be a major news issue. And I think there's going to be a lot of focus on. I think one thing the Chinese government will be very, very keen about is not being embarrassed. And that sounds almost flippant, given that, this is a deadly virus. Um, but yeah, they won't want to be seen that they haven't handled this well. They have actually been praised, and often Western media is accused of being anti-China. Well, I would point out that Western media has actually pointed out that the Chinese authorities have been very quick to act. They've been saying that. But within China itself, there's many people believe the scale of the problem may be worse than the authorities are implying. I mean, the fact that they were so quick to put Wuhan in lockdown, it may just be a precaution. That in itself is going to raise issues about freedom of movement. Um, at some point, this could go on for months, and I think you can't just lock down a city of 11 million people. Um, I think that may even cause social unrest. People in Wuhan may want to leave. May have family in other parts of the country. They may be business people. I have Chinese friends who do business in other provinces, and their work relies on them, traveling. So it'll be interesting to see how this develops. If it's anything like other epidemics of recent years, then it won't be a staggering death toll. That's a good thing. but it may cause economic problems and it may even cause social unrest within China, which will definitely test Xi Jinping's regime. So it's going to be an interesting news story to watch. But I think it is useful to put things in context. The Spanish flu killed 50 million people. I don't think we're going to see anything like that. I think if it's like Mexico flu, then we might see several thousand deaths, which is still bad for, you know, deaths are deaths. And obviously it is showing that it can be fatal to humans. One of the causes, incidentally, is being speculated to be the desire for exotic animals within China. So it may be that this sort of lifestyle needs to change. You know, this demand for exotic animals. It could be from snakes, it could be from other exotic animals. So who knows? Um, I'll be quite honest, and I don't want this to sound derogatory, but hygiene isn't the number one priority from what I saw in China. You know, you see people, and I, by the way, I'm not saying this is everyone. I'm just saying there is a problem with hygiene insofar as you get people openly spitting in the street, children defecate in the street. Um, Obviously, you're going to have another side, which is, you know, people are that isn't the case in hospitals and so on. But I'm just saying, you know, all these things may need to be considered. It may mean actually some social changes. But I think that the big priority for the Chinese government will be avoiding being red-faced and like, oh, they haven't handled it well. Anyway, incidentally, all flights from London Heathrow to Wuhan have been cancelled temporarily. This is going to affect Wuhan's economy, and it's a tourist city. You know, it's got its famous landmark is the Yellow Crane Tower, also known as Huanghulu. Anyway, are you from Wuhan? Let me know your thoughts. Are you scared? Um, are you not? I would say it's important that people don't over panic. I mean, we have to put this in context. 25 deaths, 630 cases. China has 1.4 billion people. Hubei province has 70 million people. So it is important to put things in context.